with, we can't talk about commercial door operators or any door operators unless we discuss first UL 325. UL 325 and what it consists of. You know, there are a lot of people who say, oh, there's the UL law. Well, there is no UL law. First of all, let me tell you, there's no UL law. There are no UL police. There are regulators, though, that come into our factory to make sure we're following the UL procedure to manufacture. But as far as you're concerned, there are no UL police out there. There is a law, a federal law, about residential operators. And that law simply states that we as a manufacturer cannot manufacture an operator for installation in a residence. And a residence is defined as between 1 and 4 domiciles. So if it's got 5 apartments, it's commercial. If it has 3, it's residential. But we cannot manufacture an operator for installation in a residence that does not meet UL 325 for residential use. Now the big question a lot of people ask is once UL changed and required monitored entrapment protection for commercial door operators, does that mean I can put them in residences? The answer is no, you cannot. The residential UL 325 is much stricter. It requires things like a maximum 30-second runtime. So an operator can never run more than 30 seconds. It requires that it have inherent, built into it, entrapment protection. So it reverses if it hits an obstruction. It requires that if it does reverse, it has to reverse for a minimum of 2 seconds. Commercial operators do not need that. Now there are some commercial operators that are what we call dual listed. They're listed as residential and commercial. Those can be put into residences. But a standard commercial operator cannot.
Can you give an example of that? What motor that would be? What operator?
The ATS, the 3900. Those operators are listed, they're dual listed as both a commercial operator and a residential operator. So UL has actually looked at them and tested them to meet both requirements. But unless it says it's listed for residential use, do not use it in residence. All right? In 2010, the UL code for commercial operators changed so that it required monitored external entrapment protection. Now, what does monitored entrapment protection mean? It just means that we have to monitor it, and the operator has to monitor to see that it has external entrapment protection, and it has to monitor it every closing cycle to see that it's there. If it does not see it's there, it either has to not function or function only as constant pressure to close. So that's UL 325. It also requires that there's a field card of what they call the field warning placard, and that should be put in full view of the door. And that placard is supplied with the operator, and it's basically a little card that has a stick man with his head being crushed. And it says, warning, commercial door operators can cause serious injury or even death. And that has to be put in view of the door. If it's not installed, it's not a UL installation. All right? So enough about UL. What we want to cover today is Logic 5. All of you have been using probably Logic 4. Well, I'm here to tell you, Logic 5 is coming out, and it'll be coming out. We'll be showing it at the IDA show this year, and it will be available at the end of July. What is Logic 5 going to have? One, it's going to have a new look. It'll have a burgundy covered door, and it'll say 3 things on the front. It'll say Logic 5, it'll say Security Plus 2.0, and it'll say MyCube. It's going to have monitored status, it's going to have control of the operator, and it'll have alerts. So it has everything that the residential MyCube has, it's going to have in a commercial operator.
Now, is the alert like the strobe, is it built in the opener, or is that a separate?
The alert's built into the opener so that all you have to do is program it into your smartphone or program it so that it sends you an email message every time the door opens or closes.
No, I mean, if you close the door from your phone, like the residential openers have
Audible and
audible
visual
visual.
alerts. No, it does not.
Does not.
Commercial does not require that. Residential requires that in order to close what they call unattended closure, you have to have both audible and visual alarms. Commercial does not require that. You can, if you want, to put that on there. That's actually, we call it a motion LADA circuit. And all it does is, it's called LADA, which means Logic ADA compliant. So it has, when you put a motion LADA circuit, anytime the door moves, you get a horn strobe that'll go off. So it tells you the door's in motion. But it's not required by UL that a commercial door have that.
Do you think that it might progress to the point where they do require it?
Today, they have not. They look at commercial operators a little differently to do residents. And it's basically because of the atmosphere in which they're installed. When I install a residential operator, I know there are going to be children there. In commercial operators, not so much. That's why we say don't use commercial operator in a residential application. One of the other things it's going to have is what we call dual voltage. And that means you never have to worry about ordering a 115 volt or a 230 volt machine anymore. You'll order one machine, either single phase or three phase. You will select the voltage at the time of installation. The operator will basically have a power board. This is the power board here. And you will select, you'll plug it in either to the 115 volt side or the 230 volt side. So you will plug this Molex plug in, and that will determine what the voltage is going to be. If it's a three-phase machine, this will be labeled 230 and 460.
Doing 208.
208 would be the same plug as 230.
What does it come?
Pardon?
What does it come?
It doesn't come plugged in at all. So you have to plug it in. And actually, there's violator labels on it that says plug here for 230, plug in here for 460, or plug in here for 115, plug in here for 230, single phase. So it's just a matter of taking the plug and plugging it in either this side or that side. The plug is keyed, so you can't backwards it, you can't turn it around, plug it in the wrong way. It will have Security Plus 2.0 radios, which means it will receive radio signals from transmitters on 3 frequencies: 310 megahertz, 315 megahertz, and 390 megahertz. What that means is if there's interference on one of the frequencies, it will receive on the other frequency. It broadcasts, the transmitter broadcasts in 3 frequencies all the time, and the receiver is actually receiving in all 3 frequencies. What that translates to you is about twice the range you get today. So the range from the transmitter is about twice what it was before. So I said the 3 things we'll have is MyQ, dual voltage, and Security Plus 2.0. The MyQ has been a big point for a lot of users in the commercial atmosphere. Because in residential, MyQ is a nice thing for a homeowner to have. In commercial applications, it can mean savings, and it can mean more control and more security in a commercial application. Think of your own businesses. I actually gave one of these to an installer in Chicago about 5 weeks ago, and he said I was 3 weeks too late because I could have saved him a 5-hour trip the weekend before. Because he was up in Wisconsin hunting, and he got a phone call that they had to do an emergency service call on Saturday. He had to drive 2.5 hours down to let him in and 2.5 hours back to his deer stand. He said, I lost 5 hours of hunting. I could have just gotten on my cell phone and let them in. Now, when you think of your business like that, Think of how many times you've missed dinner because you had to wait for a crew to get back that was late on the job. You won't have to do that anymore. You can go home and eat dinner. They can call you on your cell phone, and you can let them in to let them into the shop when you're at home. There are other businesses just like you.
How would that work? If you, I mean, do you have to hang up and then hit a code to do that, or can you do it while you're on the phone?
You'd actually be on the phone. You'd have to go to the application, and you go to the application, and then you can actually see your door, and it'll say it's closed, and you hit open, and the door opens.
So it's not a code, it's just an open or close?
It's an open or close code. You have to actually log in, put your password in. It's an application on your smartphone.
Now, currently, you cannot have two apps on your phone. I have a customer that has his own house and property, and he has rental property.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to put his rental, it's a commercial building actually, he wanted to put his rental doors on MyQ also, but, and give it to his renters, but he doesn't want to because they'll be able to see his door on the app.
No, because you have to put a gateway in, and
Right.
the gateway is the one that has the code, the sign-in, and the password.
Right.
So if you have two gateways, you'll have different sign-ins, different names, and different passwords for each
Okay,
one.
well, okay, because he wasn't sure.
So if it's in one location,
Right.
you can control up to 16 different items with it. So I could have 16 doors and control all 16 doors on one application, as long as they shared the same gateway. And the gateway, it broadcasts and communicates to the gateway at 900 megahertz. So it's using the same type of communication that you use for a wireless phone. Not a cell phone, but a wireless, cordless phone. When we've talked to people, this is the things we've heard from them. As I said the other one, MyQ would have saved me 4 hours round trip to open my warehouse and let people in. We've talked to fire stations, and we have a lot of fire chiefs that are really excited about MyQ. In fact, I have a fire station in Charlotte, North Carolina, that's already told me they're going to change out. They have 5 brand new openers on their station, so we're changing them all out because I want the MyQ stuff in there. Because I want to be able, while I'm on the truck heading to the fire, look back and see that my station's locked down. We're going to be advertising this, so it's going to be in the publications that you guys read, Garage Door News, Garage Door and Access System, which is the DASMA magazine, and the International Door and Operator Industry, which is the IDA magazine. So the ads in there, but then also we're going to advertise to the end users. So it's going to be in Fire Engineering. This is an engineering magazine that goes to all the fire stations. It's going to be in Body Shop Business, so all the auto repair places. So either the body shops or the automotive repair places, they get that. It's going to be an Architectural Record. So all the architects will be seeing it. You're going to see it spec'd in jobs. Now, and one of the things that the model numbers are going to change. As we switch from Logic 4 to Logic 5, model numbers are going to change. Today, our model number nomenclature is the T here tells you that it's a trolley operator. When we put a B in front of it, it means it's got a brake. The 50 is the horsepower, and that's decimal. So 50 is a half horsepower, 33 is a third, 75 is a 3/4, a 10 is a 1 horse, a 15 is a 1.5, a 20 is a 2, and a 30 is a 3 horse. Today we have a 1 here that says that's the voltage. That means it's 115 volts. If this were a 2, it'd be a 230 volt machine, either single or 3-phase. If it was a 4, it'd be a 460. If it was a 5, it'd be a 575. And you probably won't see any 575 unless some of you are from Canada. The next one is the phase. It's either single phase or 3-phase. Today it's a Logic 4, tomorrow will be a Logic 5. And then the numbers on the end tell you what type of modifications are put on it. When I look at an operator and I see a 1 on the end, that tells me it's got a non-resettable counter. That's what the 1 stands for. If it was a 3, it'd be a TEFC motor. If it was a 5, it'd be auxiliary open and close limits. So those different numbers at the end just tell me what kind of modifications are done on the commercial operator. Tomorrow it'll change. And the nice thing is if you're stock operators, it means you only have to stock half of what you usually did. Because tomorrow, a 5011 will turn into a 501. Because I don't need to worry whether it's 115 volt or 230 volt. It's the same machine. If it's a 3-phase, I don't need to worry if it's a 230, a 460, or a 208. It's going to be the same machine. All I need to know is that it's 3-phase. And then 575 is different, but I said unless you're from Canada, you don't have to worry about that.
So the pricing remains the same too, regardless of the phase or the voltage?
The pricing will be the same. Now this is what the Logic 4 board looks like, and a lot of the features will remain tomorrow, the same as they are today. You're going to have a low voltage wiring terminal. You're going to have program buttons, your MAS for your maintenance alert system, radio controls, maximum run timer, mid-stop, and timer to close. Those will remain the same. The onboard controls will remain the same. Open, close, and stop. Open, close, stop. You'll still have the selector dial. The selector dial will be what you choose your wiring type. C2 for constant pressure to close, B2 for momentary contact to close. D1, constant pressure open and close. E2 is constant pressure close with rollback feature. If I let go of the close button, the door doesn't stop, it reverses and goes back up. And then my timer wires. T for timer to close, TS for timer secure. In timer secure wiring, if the door comes down and hits an obstruction or someone interrupts the photo eyes, it goes back up, it times out again and continues to try and close. Timer secure, it keeps trying to close till it gets closed. And then FSTS, which is fire station timer secure. In fire station timer secure, the only time the timer is activated is if an input comes into the SBC, single button control. Then it also has diagnostic mode, an option programming mode, and then program mode. In diagnostic mode, you can do testing of the operator. It allows you to put it in diagnostic mode. Nothing works. So you don't have to worry about the operator running when you're in diagnostic mode. If you put the operator in diagnostic mode, the operator won't move. The motor is disconnected. It's not going to run. However, all the control functions do run, so you can test all your wiring. It still has your auxiliary card receptacles. You'll still have the same auxiliary cards that you use today on your Logic 4. You'll still have the motor direction jumper. So if you have to change motor direction, this is when you have through-the-wall applications, or when you have an auxiliary trolley, or if for some reason you have to mount the motor upside down. When open becomes closed, closed becomes open, instead of having to rewire, all you really need to do is move the jumper and move one limit switch. The safety limit, that's all. It still has the antenna plug, only the antenna plug will be a Logic, a Security Plus 2.0 radio receiver, and it'll also broadcast at 900 megahertz for controls and for the MyQ. The P6 harness, basically will have control to the limit switches, and it'll also send controls to the power board. It'll have your motor phase jumper, which just means I can use one board for either single phase or 3-phase. So it's the same Logic board. K3 relay. On a Logic 4 operator, I've got a K3 relay right here. That's the only place I have high voltage on the board. There's 110 volts right here, or 115 volts. On Logic 5, there is no K3 relay. There is no high voltage on this board whatsoever. So So you can touch this board all you want, you're not gonna get fried. This is your power board. You're gonna have 3 plugs on the power board. You're gonna have your high voltage relays here. You're gonna have a 115 volt Molex plug or a 230 volt Molex plug. It's simply you decide what voltage you're gonna be at and then you plug it in there. So whatever incoming voltage you have, 115 volt or 230 if you're single phase, 230 or 460 if you're 3 phase, you plug the plug into either one. If you have a brake, the brake will be plugged in here. Also, when you get replacement motors, you don't have to wire a motor anymore. For a replacement motor, you mount the motor and you plug it in. It'll come with a plug already on it. 18 LED lights to aid you in troubleshooting and for installation. You have your limit switches, close, safety limit, mid-stop, and open limit. Your radio control. Your timer, this tells you when your timer is enabled. If you're up on an operator and you're working on it, and this light is flashing, be aware that means it's timing down. It's going to start running on its own. So if you're up there working on an operator and it starts flashing, you better know that I need to put it in diagnostic mode, otherwise this motor is going to start running. Your motor run relays, they're labeled A and B. The reason we label them A and B instead of open and closed is because I can have a motor direction change where open could become closed and closed could become open. Normal, if it's in a normal position, A is open, B is closed. My data communication. Data communication merely tells me that I have communication going between the auxiliary boards that are plugged into one of these two and the motherboard itself. That's all it does, is tell me that I've got communication going back and forth. 24 volt AC. If I have my transformer working properly and it's hooked up, I will have this green light turned on. If this light is not turned on, it means I either don't have power to the operator or my transformer's bad. Timer defeat. If I have installed the timer defeat button and it's activated, this light will light up to tell me that's why my timer's not closing the door, because my timer is not activated. Maintenance alert system. The maintenance alert system is something you set when you install the operator. You program it in 5,000 cycle increments or in 3-month time increments, either or both. So I can, when I put the operator in, I can program it so that 15,000 cycles from now or 9 months, this light and the LED light on the 3-button station will begin to flash once every 2 seconds. There's a sticker that goes on the side of the 3-button station that says, if this light is flashing once every 2 seconds, it's time to call for routine maintenance. And then there's a place for you to put your sticker so they call you. And it'll keep flashing until you come and reset it. It's kind of like the idiot light on your car.
What type of maintenance would be required, just normal use?
Normal use, you could be door maintenance. That in 6 months, they should probably have you come out and lubricate the door, check the springs, check the rollers, check to make sure everything is working in proper order.
More than likely it'll be the door, not the
More
motor.
than likely, it's the door.
I knew you'd say that.
The operator, you might check the tension on the belt, you might check to make sure everything's lubricated properly. It does help to lubricate things. Lubrication does come off, especially if you're in hot climates, because grease tends to get less viscous, let me put it that way. It gets very liquidy and can drip off when you're in hot climates, extremely hot. Safety, there are 2 safety inputs, LMEP, LMEP, which stands for Lift Master Monitored Entrapment Protection. This is where you put monitored photo eyes, monitored edges. You would not put non-monitored things there, only monitored things. If you have non-monitored and you're using it for ancillary, or what we call secondary or tertiary protection, that would be hooked up to the input called edge. And you would put a normally open reversing device. So it could be a set of photo eyes, it could be a pneumatic edge, or it could be a 2-wire electric edge, non-monitored. That would hook up to the input that says edge. It's non-monitored. UL requires that your primary entrapment protection be monitored. Any additional protection you put up to protect the door from hitting vehicles or the such, that does not need to be monitored. Yes?
Is Logic 5 gonna allow you to put another through beam right into the board, or are you still gonna have to?
You're still gonna have to use the CPS 3 card. In order to monitor both items, we need to have the CPS 3 card.
If you got non-monitored for the second set of eyes, you could do it through the board.
Yes, but you wouldn't use you wouldn't use a LiftMaster set of eyes. You'd use things like Omron or EMX or Allen Bradley. Some set a set of photo eyes that just has a normally open, normally closed contact, and then you'd use the normally open contact. Put common into the edge input. Like I said, only the primary needs to be monitored. And if you're putting photo eyes up, does anyone know what height they're supposed to be? No higher than 6 inches from the ground. The photo eyes that are required to be monitored are not to protect cars or trucks. They're protecting people. They need to be no higher than 6 inches from the ground. Doesn't matter whether they want to protect the car. If they want to protect the car, they need to use ancillary or secondary entrapment protection. The primary set is for protecting people. There was a case 2 years ago up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I don't know if you've read it, it was in the Dasma magazine, where the owner of a bus depot had an installer put the photo eyes at about 5 feet above the floor because he had very expensive buses and he didn't want them to get hit by the door. One day he was leaving the shop and he hit the button to close the door, tried to race out underneath it, and he slipped on the ice and fell in front of right underneath the door. They found him in the morning. He was asphyxiated because the door came down on top of him and pinned him down, and he couldn't breathe. And he died there. OSHA fined his widow $25,000. They were real sympathetic people.
Why can't that make the news? I never heard about that.
There's actually, it was an article that was printed into it was in the paper in Minneapolis where it happened, and it was actually, it was an excerpt from it printed in the Dasma magazine. And there's going to be an article out quoting it again in April, next month.
And they didn't go after the dealer?
They did not go after the dealer. OSHA doesn't care about the dealer. All they care about is a safe workplace. And they said, photo eyes are supposed to be at 6 inches. These were not at 6 inches from the ground. Therefore, it was an unsafe workplace.
I'll bet the widow went after the dealer.
I don't know.
They leave that part out.
I never heard about whether that happened or not.
They should have. They should have.
What if the dealer didn't put them up there and the company did it?
That's,
You know,
the dealer's not
you
liable.
have a lot of companies that maintenance.
I've
do
seen a
what
lot,
they
yeah,
do.
I've seen,
3 feet.
right, yeah.
And 75% of the dealers I talk to tell me, that's where we put them.
Well,
And I keep telling them, it's not where they should be.
No. It'd be a
And you're
civil,
leaving yourself open to liability if you leave them there.
it'd be civil liability, right? I mean, because UL's not a law, so it all. comes-
UL's not a law,
It would
but
come
you're
down
going to
like
get
that
sued if
situation.
someone gets injured.
The widow would sue you in a civil court for
Yes.
liability, and if you did it that way, I would imagine,
And someone said, you know, I was at a car dealership 2 weeks ago, and they told me, no, I want them at 3 feet. And I said, you can't. They should be at 6 inches. And he goes, I'll sign a waiver. And I go, that's fine if you get hit by the door. But not if your worker over there gets hit by the door, because he didn't sign the waiver. And a little child that might be running underneath it, he didn't sign the waiver. So the waiver isn't worth the paper it's printed on.
There's no sticker on the I-beam or anything that says 6 inches?
No, because we don't know if it's a secondary set. It's in the owner's manual. So the owner's manual tells you that it should be installed no higher than 6 inches from the floor.
You can put a second set of photo eyes on it, though, right?
You can put a second set, you can put 3 sets, you can put as many sets as you want on. It's only required that that first set be monitored, that's 6 inches from the floor. Any other set doesn't have to be monitored, it can be. If you want to, you can hook up a CPS-3 card, put another set on that's monitored, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to be monitored. Now, if someone wants to make sure that their vehicle doesn't get hit, well then yes, you probably want to monitor the second set. Because monitored entrapment is only the true safety. That's the only true safety you have, is if it's monitored. I was at a job site down in Dallas, Texas, and I was trying to figure out why people would motorize doors and why some people didn't motorize doors. So I was visiting auto repair shops. And I went to places like there was a battery, NTB, National Tire Battery. They don't know how to make any of their doors. They're using chain wipes to open and close all their doors. And I said, why? They said, because we don't want to spend money. Then I went to a truck repair place that had 40 doors, and every one of them was motorized. And I said, why did you motorize them? And he said, because I don't make money when my mechanics are spinning doors up and down. I make money when when their head's inside the truck fixing it. I said, oh, okay. And he goes, and I got safety on all the doors. I said, you do? He goes, yeah. And he showed me how he had safety, pneumatic edges. I hate pneumatic edges because they're the worst thing in the world. They make you think you got safety. So I tested 40 doors. Guess how many were working? Guess how many pneumatic edges worked on 40 doors?
4.
2. You're right, 4 of them.
Wow.
4 of them. 36 of them were not working. He thought he had safety.
So did you sell them I-beams?
Yes, I did.
Hey, quick question, kind of about the photo cells. How many monitored, like CPS photo cells, can you, is 2 a maximum? Or can you actually put a third one on?
You could put a third one
And it would monitor, would you run it?
on.
with the same card, or-
Okay. The reason you can't put up 2 cells and hooked up to the LNET is because the way our photo cell works is it sends a pulsed beam of light. It's pulsing that beam of light 7 times a second. So it's not sending a straight beam, it's pulsing it 7 times a second. The receiving eye is counting. Did I get 7 pulses that second? Did I get 7 pulses that second? If it doesn't get 7 pulses, it sends a message to the logic board and says, I'm obstructed or I'm malfunctioning. So go to constant pressure to close. So it sends a message if it's not getting the pulses. If I hook up 2 photo eyes, one of them is obstructed, the other one's looking fine and sees the 7 pulses. So it could see the 7 pulses from one beam and think it's coming from the other. And it might not reverse when that's obstructed. It's called occlusion, or we call it masking. That one photo beam could mask the other one. The chances of it doing that it be completely in line, that the 7 pulses from one would exactly match the 7 pulses from the other, the chances are about 1 in about 300,000. But it could happen. So it could possibly happen. So if you have primary set, I'd say the only one I want hooked up primary is to this LNET. If I put a CPS-3 card in and I put 4 sets on it, fine, if one occludes the other. The chances of it happening are so minimal that it's not going to be that big a deal.
Anyway, so.
And it's not my entrapment protection for
So you
people.
just wire them all into the same card, you don't
Yeah.
have to put stack
To
cards
the
in
E
there.
terminal and the F terminal.
Can you put a residential photo eye on a commercial operator?
Yes,
So So the residential photo eye will work on that operator.
Yes, it will.
And does that date back, some time back?
Since Logic 4.
Logic 4 is, how long has Logic 4 been there?
Logic 4 came, actually it's Logic 3, actually, so it's Logic 3. Logic 3's been out since 2006.
Is it monitored if you put one of those on?
Yes.
Really?
The only difference between the two is the pulse rate's a little different, but it will read both.
How many of these can you put on before you have to change the transformer?
The photo eye runs on 5-volt DC. I could put about 50 of them on, then I'd have to upgrade my transformer. The voltage pulled down on them is milliamps. It's very minimal. All right, I'm gonna move around real quickly here because we're running out of time. Single button control is the same. All right, so the numbers are gonna change slightly, but the letters for the operator are gonna remain the same. You've got your limited duty machines, your medium duty all have an M in them, then your standard duty, and then your heavy duty gearheads all have a G in them. You still have the same charts in the books that tell you what the horsepower should be based on door size. Accessory items, you got control accessories, push buttons, pull cords, keypads, timers and interlock switches, safety accessories. And it's important that you delineate between vehicular safety detection and pedestrian safety. If I want to protect vehicles, I can use things like loop detectors. But a loop detector isn't going to pick me up as a pedestrian unless I got an awful lot of change in my pocket. But it will pick up automobiles. So I can actually set safety loops to keep a door from hitting a car. I can't just put that loop underneath the door because the door itself would cause it to reverse. Unless it's a wooden door. Mounting accessories, we have a number of different mounting brackets that are available. Modification cards. CPS 3 cards. If you're going to use secondary or tertiary protection, you need to use the CPS 3 card. And you got two terminals here, E and F, and that's where they wire to, E and F. You can also hook up a 4-wire edge, so a 4-wire monitored edge, or a 2-wire edge that uses a 10K resistor. So you can have monitored edges and monitored photo eyes with the CPS 3 card. TLS card. TLS card gives you the option of putting a red-green light on, so I can control a red-green light. It has 3 outputs, so I can have a red light, a green light, and I can also have a yellow light, or I can have a horn strobe with one of the outputs, so that I can have the ADA compliant. It has adjustable pre-warning. So if I have a timer to close program that it's going to close the door in 30 seconds, I can set this so in 10 seconds before that, or 5 seconds before that, the green light on the traffic light goes out and the red light starts to flash, telling people, don't drive through the door now, it's going to close. There are 7 modes of operation, so I can make the red light flash, or I can make the red light come on steady, I can make the green light flash, I can do whatever I want. I can set it so that I have flashing lights that when the operator's running. If I have large rolling doors and I want external limits on them, because when you get real large rolling doors or real tall rolling doors, they don't necessarily nest the same way every time they go up. So my limits can move around. So a lot of times what they'll do is you'll put a set of limits on the door itself to shut the door down when it gets full open or full close. Those external limits wire into the TLS card. I have visual status for output, so when I'm hooking things up, I can actually see when it's activating because I have LED lights that tell me when relay R1s, R2, and R3 are activated. And I have inputs for special functions. I can make it so that timer only works only if it's inputted from a certain device. I can do special inputs to open, special inputs to close. So I can do a lot of different modifications just by plugging in this card. It said we have a red-green traffic light. It's 24-volt LED lights. 24 volt means you can wire it, you don't need an electrician. And you can wire it right to the operator. You can pull a 24 volt right off the operator. It's LED lights, so they never burn out. They're measured in 100,000 cycles. So in other words, 100,000 hours that light will last. 100,000 hours. It's not going to burn out. I've got an aux contact card, the same aux contact card, so I can have it control things like heaters and fans. I can use it to control all kinds of auxiliary devices. They can take up to 240 volts and up to 10 amps. So it can even control like electric heaters. We have a number of different photo eyes. The RPEN4, which is the retroreflective photo eye. When using this, there's one important thing that you have to understand. This photo eye came from Europe. And in Europe, they do things green. Which means all of my other photo eyes, when they're lined up and working, the lights are on. On this one, when it's lined up and working, the light goes out. So it's an important thing to know when you're hooking them up, that when it's lined up, the LED light goes out. It's also, this is polarized. Polarization gives me two things. One, it's impervious to sunlight. You can have sunlight shining right in it, it's not going to pick it up. If it reflects off something like a vehicle, that vehicle doesn't have a polarized reflector on it, so it's not going to pick that up as the reflector. It'll pick it up as an obstruction. However, because it's polarized, direction matters. In other words, if this is in an up and down fashion, so does the reflector have to be in an up and down fashion. If I turn it this way 90 degrees, it won't work.
What's it say when it's sending?
Pardon?
What signal is it sending across?
It's sending a signal across to the reflector and it's reflecting back to it. So this is actually a receiving eye and a sending eye.
Okay, but help me out with the polarizing. I don't quite follow you there.
Okay, polarized, if you ever had a set of polarized glasses, if you take two glasses, you put them together and you turn them sideways, they turn black. You can't see anything through them. Well, what that does then is because it's polarized, the way it reflects things like sunlight, it won't see the sunlight because the sunlight doesn't reflect off the right way. So it makes it impervious to the sunlight, so the sun won't block it out, the signal.